Today is the third day of August 2018. I greet the good people of the world in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. This is my 10th message and the 9th voice message that I am sharing with the good people of the world. Like always, my name is Chinyere Ezog, the Income Writer. In the last edition, I revealed why the French President Emmanuel Macron came to Nigeria and his visit to Fela's shrine. And today, the same Macron is meeting with the Prime Minister of Theresa May and Muhammadu Buhari have traveled to London. People don't understand the significance of the 10 days holidays Buhari have claimed he's going to stay at London. The purpose of the holidays because Nigeria has been ruled from London all this while. The Prime Minister is meeting with Macron. Macron is going to brief the Prime Minister who will in turn come and brief Buhari. So they are meeting on braces is a big lie. All what they are meeting for is all about Biafra. That is what they are discussing. They are going to discuss about the event of the already declared jihad. All what their discussion is centered on the jihad that is already going on. And there is one important word that we use to decode. This is the key word. If we decode that word, we will understand exactly what is going on in all these things. And that is the term violent extremism. When you decode it, anytime United Nations or any of the, even if you walk back to old documents and go back and understand what that violent extremism means, then you will really understand what is happening in all this subterfuge of fighting terrorism and all that. And that is what we are going to treat today. Because I said the last time I came, I said I decided to await the result of the summit of the ECOWAS and the ECAS meeting. That summit is nothing but all about adopting the Abuja Declaration. The Abuja Declaration is all about the communique of the Conference of Defense Ministers of 28 states, of 28 African states. The resolution they adopted there was what formed the key element of the document that was adopted at the Conference of ECOWAS and ECAS, and the implementation. That is the essence of what that summit is all about. You understand me? And look at it. I'm going to read the statement of the chairperson of the Commission of the African Union on the outcome of the ECOWAS-ECAS Joint Committee and the ECOWAS Summit held in Lome on 30th and 31st July 2018 respectively. That is from Addis Ababa. This is 1st August on 2018. The chairperson of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, welcomed the outcome of the Joint Summit of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the Economic Community of Central African States, ECAS, held in Lome on 30 July 2018. This summit in which he participated marked a new and important step in the effort to meet the challenge of peace and security within both communities, including through greater synergy of efforts to combat terrorism and violent extremism, which means terrorism is different from violent extremism. So in order to define this violent extremism, the first time it was used was in the speech delivered by John Kerry, the former American Secretary of State. The speech he delivered in Sokoto State on Tuesday, the 23rd of August 2016. The title of that speech is The Importance of Resilient Communities and Religious Tolerance Encountering Violent Extremism, which I told you people last time that I was able to decode. I decoded the whole essence of that speech by December 17 of 2016. So I'm going to go back to that publication to that my decode of December 2016. I'm going to read from there because this document is a legal document that will prove the culpability of Barack Obama, the former president of America, in all this terrorism and all that. So you will understand the race that is termed violent extremism that they are sitting in Georgia, that even this ECOWAS and ECAS summit is all about. So now, in that particular speech of John Kerry, he told us about there was a legend story he told us about Zik and Ahmadu Bello. You understand me? That we have to decode that legend story to understand, exactly what is happening. In that legend story, he was talking about how he declared a war on ignorance and so on. So we will actually understand. Now I am going to quote extract of John Kerry from that particular speech. And I'm quoting him now. I mentioned Ahmadu Bello at the beginning of my remark. And there's an old story that I'm sure many of you have heard at one time or another. I heard His Eminence use the word a few minutes ago when we were in the meeting we were in. Shortly after Nigeria's independence, the country's first president, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who had met briefly with Mr. Bello to discuss Nigeria's future and ways to overcome the deep-seated ethnic and religious divisions that existed then, and as legend has it, President Azikiwe proclaimed, "Let us now forget our differences." And Bello countered, "No, let us understand our differences." And that is what His Eminence said. He said it is by understanding our differences that we can build unity throughout Nigeria. End of quote. You see, Nnamdi Azikiwe and Ahmadu Bello are not the only people who fought for the independence of Nigeria, but specifically two of them were singled out. You understand me? Awolowo was not mentioned. So that eliminates the Yorubas from this particular thing. I want people to take important note of that. So now we have started, very important, we start to take notes of very important issues and lies deliberately told by the United States Secretary of State just to enable him deliver the seed of this coded message. The United States of American Secretary of State will do well to provide the forum, the real location where this story was first told, where this conversation between Zik and Ahmadu Bello took place, because most Nigerians are hearing this story for the first time from his mouth. I heard His Eminence use the word a few minutes ago when we were in the meeting we were in. End of his quote, which shows exactly what he was discussing with the Islamic Northerners. I'm quoting him again. Shortly after Nigeria's independence, the country's first president, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who had met briefly with Mr. Bello to discuss what are they actually discussing? That's the question. We repeat, to discuss what? Ways to overcome the deep-seated ethnic and religious division that existed then, according to him. Ask yourself, what is the most dominant issue in Nigeria today? Of course, everybody knows that the country is presently knocked down because of what? Deep-seated ethnic and religious division that is existing now, not then, more now than then. The essence of their meeting is on discussing how to overcome the deep-seated ethnic and religious division that existed now. I'm quoting him again, and as legend has it, President Azikiwe proclaimed, "Let us now forget our differences." And as legend has it, legend, let us decode legend. What is the dictionary definition of the legend? Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 10th edition, defines legend as story coming down from the past, especially one popularly regarded as historical, although not verifiable. 2. B. A body of such stories, a popular myth of recent origin. D. A person or thing that inspires legend. Very important to note is that the issue in discourse that is the supposed conversation between Zik and Ahmadu Bello is domiciled in Nigeria and not in America. Our independence is from Britain, not Washington or New York. Legend and myth are stories of the past handed down the ages by the aborigines of the place it occurred, who are the first witnesses to the events in question. How come an American is weaving the myth and legend story on what occurred in Nigeria, and the supposed inheritors of the handed down and the supposed inheritors of the legend handed down the line of history have not heard about it, even though it is woven around them, yet not verifiable. That is why John Kerry must provide the source of the legend or my story told to Nigerians in their own soil by a foreigner. Zik was mentioned in that, by a foreigner. Now, let us accept that legend story is true. Then we decode it in that essence, that we have now accepted it as true. You understand me? Declared war on ignorance. And that is a war that much of the world is still fighting every single day. Which race did Ahmadu Bello declare war on? That is what we are going to find out. You understand me? Now, it's about the difference the two signifies. Zik said, according to Kerry, "Let us now forget our differences." Like I said earlier, Othman Dan Fodio is the founder of the Sokoto Caliphate, of the Sultanate throne, the great patriarch of the Sultanate throne in Sokoto State that adopted the state logo, Born to Rule. He was a Fulani man and an Islamic scholar. He was equally the great-grandfather of Ahmadu Bello, the late Sultan of Sokoto, and Prime Minister of Northern Nigeria. This bloodline is the reason Saud Abubakar remained the supreme leader of the Fulani Caliphate and the spiritual leader of the Muslim sects in Nigeria, like his forebears, because the Hausas were conquered by Ottoman Danfodio through jihad and became his subject, by extension, subject to Fulani authority down the ages. The United States Secretary of State gave us a hint about the time dispensation in which the might or legend story was waived, which is, according to him, shortly after independence. The country's first president, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who had met briefly with Bello to discuss Nigerian future and ways to overcome the deep-seated ethnic and religious division that existed then, end of his quote. He cleverly avoided mentioning the turf where the deep-seated ethnic and religious divisions were playing out. They were being played at the political turf. The correct statement, which is what he discussed but cleverly omitted in the heading of his speech, also is in the mind story he weaved around his two legends conversation, is Zik met briefly with Bello to discuss Nigerian future and ways to overcome the deep-seated ethnic, religious and political division that existed then, existing more now than then. Nnamdi Azikiwe cannot meet with Ahmadu Bello to discuss religious differences if it is not from a political dimension, because Zik was not a religious leader like Bello. He was a politician, and whatever differences that existed between the two that gave cause to the American manufactured legend stories, political differences that have offshoots of or manifested in deep-seated ethnic and religious division. Since he gave us a hint about the time of this legend story, shortly after independence, meaning that the differences in question was a pre-independence matter, since legends are handed down from ages. A look into the archives of Nigerian history pre-independence revealed that in 1952, Ahmadu Bello, who was the premier of Northern Nigeria, the Sultan of Sokoto, and the leader of the Northern People's Congress, NPC, made the following request to the Nigerian Colonial Secretary, Mr. Oliver Littington. I'm quoting him, if you want us the North to be part of this Nigeria you have in mind, then you want 50% of the membership of the National Assembly. End of quote. Going down memory lane in a beautiful piece entitled How Federalism Was Destroyed in Nigeria by Remi Oyoyemi. Remi recalled that as a result, I'm quoting her now, as a result of the election of 1954, there were 162 seats in the Nigerian National Assembly. Out of these, the South had 83 seats, that is 51.23%, and the North had 79 seats, that is 48.76%, including the Yoruba people of Kwara. This means that if the Kwara people were not lumped with the North, they would still have less number of seats than 79, since this was based on population. This shows that the south of Nigeria had always been more populous than the north of Nigeria, but Sultan Bello evidence from the 1952 request has a different idea. If one considers his aristocratic background, one would have an understanding of his fear of pure democracy. Aristocracy is the government of a country by a small group of people, especially hereditary nobility, which is a group believed to be superior to all others of the same kind, thought for the Sultan to seek to dominate by any means necessary would seem natural to him. In 1957, he refused the independence of Nigeria because he insisted the North was not ready. But the North was ready when he got what he wanted and more before Nigeria's independence in 1960. The British overlord, in order to assuage Sultan Bello's fear and put Nigeria in his control, created in 1959 312 seats for the Nigerian National Assembly without any election or new census. Out of these 312, the North was allocated 174 and the South 138 in the anticipation of a parliamentary political system being put in place for Nigeria's independence. Sultan Bello asked for 50% of the seats in the National Assembly. He got 55.72%. Suddenly, an apartheid system was put in place as the majority South became the minority and the minority North became the majority. This is where the future of Nigeria was unmade, and the seed for the destruction of the Nigerian Federation, of the Nigerian federalism, was sowed. This development gave an unpunished confidence to Sultan Bello, who declared on October 12, 1960, in an interview with the Parrot just after independence, the following words: "This new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of our great-grandfather Ottoman Danfodio. We must ruthlessly prevent a change of power. We use the minorities in the north as willing tools and the south as conquered territory, and never allow them to rule over us, and never allow them to have control over their future." End of quote. That was quite a bombshell, and I must thank Remi Oyeyemi for the very insightful piece that still ran a long stretch for providing insight into the development in pre- and immediate post-independence Nigeria. Exactly in that context that one can locate the differences in the legend story Kerry told his Muslim audience in Sokoto State. Bearing in mind, told his audience in bearing in mind how Nigerian independence because of Sultan Bello selfish demand had been delayed and his statement was parrot on October 12, 1960. The true test of Kerry's speech should be as we come back to decoding John Kerry's speech. Shortly after Nigeria's independence, the country's first president, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, who had met briefly with Mr. Bello to discuss Nigerian future and ways to overcome deep-seated ethnic, political, and religious division that existed then, and as legend has it, President Azikiwe proclaimed, "Let us not forget this aristocratic leaning and treat everybody as equal." And Bello countered, "No, Nigeria is the estate of our great-grandfather. You cannot rule over us. We must control your destiny." That was Sultan Bello's counter to Zig's demand that Kerry put us. Let us understand our differences. Going further, Kerry stated, and that is what His Eminence said. He said, "It is by understanding our differences that we can build unity throughout Nigeria." Meaning the present Sultan only re-echoed what his great-grandfather had told Zig. It is only by their subjecting to our authority of controlling their future and converting to Islam that we can build unity throughout Nigeria. That is exactly what was in the mind of Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Sa'ad Abubakar, whether spoken or not. An elder statesman, Ato Agon Chanwamko, stated in one of his speeches on why the Igbos don't feel comfortable with a Buhari's presidency, wrote the following words, and I'm quoting him. If the Igbo view Buhari's presidency with reservation or accuse him of implementing an Hausa Fulani agenda, it is because they are not unaware of the mindset of many of the Northern heavyweights that masterminded the emergence of Buhari. Just listen to Ali Ugwazo's comment in 2004, and I'm quoting him. "When I say that the presidency must come to the North next year, I am referring to the Hausa Fulani core North and not any Northern Christian or Muslim minority tribe. The Christians in the North and all other Christians are nothing. And the Muslim minorities in the North know that when we are talking about leadership in the North and in Nigeria, Allah has given it to us, the Hausa Fulani. They can grumble, mourn, and groan as much as they want, but each time they go into their bedroom to meet their wives, and each time they go on their prayer mass to begin the prayer, it is we, the Hausa Fulani, they think of, that they fear, that they bow to, and they pray for. Some of them are even ready to give us their wives and daughters for one night sport and pleasure. They owe us everything. This is because we gave them Islam through the great jihad waged by Sheikh Osman Danfodio. We also captured the Lorraine, killed their local king, and installed our Fulani emir. We took that ancient town from the Yoruba and their 50 pagan gods. We liberated these places and the entire people by imposing Islam on them by force. It was either the Quran or the sword, and most of them choose the Quran in return for the good work of our forefathers. Allah, through the British government, gave us Nigeria to rule and to do as we please. Since 1960, we have been doing that, and we intend to continue." End of quote. Like I said earlier, that was exactly what was in the mind of the Sultan of Sokoto, and exactly the main message of the American Secretary of State. That is the reason why no Christian organization like Christian Association of Nigeria or even Northern Christian Association of Nigerian branch was not invited in any of the activities that went on in Sokoto State when the American Secretary of State visited. Yet he had meeting with Northern Islamic religious leaders. Now the main bomb, and I expect that Ahmadu Bello will be proud that in the country today, school attendance, literally, and graduation rates are higher than ever before. But he wouldn't be satisfied, and you know that, because even late in his career, he declared a war on ignorance. And that is a war that much of the world is still fighting every single day way beyond Nigeria. The reason is that to some people in this world, knowledge is not a goal to be pursued, but rather it is an enemy to be destroyed. End of quote of Kerry. I want us to consider this statement from a son or children, America, whose parents, Britain, invented the English language, to enable us to understand what the American Secretary of State have just said. If, as the American Secretary of State, John Kerry, said, and expect that Ahmadu Bello would be proud that in this country today, school attendance, literally, and graduation rates are higher than ever before. End of his quote. Then why would he not be satisfied with this astronomical success in a thing he started in a small touch shot? But he wouldn't be satisfied, and you know that. Does it make any sense at all? It makes very good sense when you decode the follow-up statement, because even late in his career, he declared a war on ignorance, that is exactly the bomb, the order to kill the people of the former eastern region, an order for the Muslim corner to declare jihad on them with the full backing and support of American government. Note, late in his career, Note also declared a war on ignorance. It is important to observe that there was a strong emphasis on declared a war on ignorance, because war on ignorance appeared as a quote within the speech, because it is another and operational order for the Muslim North to declare jihad on their southern Christian counterparts, as we will find out soon. From the foregoing already so far exposed, it is obvious the war Ahmadu Bello declared in the context of Kerry's speech was not on ignorance per se. Ignorance connotes to the ignorance of the people who failed to understand their own worldview between their aristocrats and born-to-rule leaning against their opposers in the story of the legend might of Ahmadu Bello and Nnamdi Azikiwe. Zik said, "Let us not forget this aristocratic leaning and treat everybody as equal citizens in our new country." But Sultan Bello countered, "Note the use of the word countered in place of the soft would have been replied." Sultan Bello countered, "No, Nigeria is the estate of our great-grandfather. You cannot rule over us. We must control your destiny." Again, note the statement of the time dispensation when Ahmadu Bello declared this war on ignorance late in his career, which is immediately after the independence, and he did declare a war on ignorance per se. He declared a war on those who will oppose their views and natural birthright, that this new nation called Nigeria should be an estate of our great-grandfather Usman Dan Fodio. We must really prevent a change of power. We must use the minorities in the north as willing tools and the south as conquered territory, and never allow them to rule over us, and never allow them have control over their future. Going back to Kerry's speech and decoding it straight as to what he meant and actually said, not said publicly though, but the operational order that cannot be changed or ignored as given by him that must be obeyed. But Ahmadu Bello would never be satisfied that change is taking place, because even late in his career he declared the war on the people advocating for change, the people of Zik, and that is the war that much of the world is still fighting every single day way beyond Nigeria. End of quote. Ask yourself, the war that has been most predominant in Nigeria ever since the North and the Southern Protectorate came together in the amalgamation. Of course, war of Hausa Fulani domination of power, sovereign constitutional conference, Hausa Fulani said no. Implement Jonathan's confab report, Hausa Fulani said no. Restructure the country, Hausa Fulani said no. What do you want? You want to Islamize Nigeria. You want everybody to be under us. That is exactly the war that is raging presently at the epicenter of, in the heart of Nigeria now. The reason is that I'm quoting now. The reason I'm quoting Kerry. The reason is that to some people in this world, knowledge is not a goal to be pursued, but rather it's an enemy to be destroyed. We have its full meaning when you go down to the next stanza with the subheading impact on insurgency. But note first, which people or terror groups see knowledge as abomination, as an enemy to be destroyed. Of course, Boko Haram says that abhors knowledge, that abhors Western knowledge, except knowledge based on their Quran. Going down the next stanza, John Kerry said, "As everyone in this room well know, in its quest to destroy knowledge, the terrorist group Boko Haram killed more than 20,000 people, displaced more than 2 million, and flung 7 million Nigerians into hunger, thirst, and desperate need. On Sunday, they descended into a small village near Chibok in the middle of the night, looting every home that they saw, and then they took food and livestock before burning those huts to the ground. They killed 10 people that night and abducted 13 others, women and children, adding to the thousands of victims, including the hundreds of girls of Chibok school girls who were abducted more than 2 years ago. Boko Haram boasts no agenda other than the murder of teachers, other than to murder teachers, bomb boost, kidnap students, rape women and girls, and slaughter innocent people, most of whom are Muslims. It is a lie that most of the victims of Boko Haram are Muslims." Before we touch the above decode, the literal statement of American Secretary of State John Kerry, it is very important we draw up the statement that completes the full intent of the coded message in his speech, and that is, I'm quoting him again, "But we know that beating Boko Haram on the battlefield is only the beginning of what we need to do.
As the American writer David Torres wrote, I'm quoting him, there are 1,000 hackings at the branch of evil to only one who is striking at the root. So we have to strike at the root cause of violent extremism. I want us to know the use of the word violent extremism, as we will define immediately after laying bare the literary meaning of what John Kerry actually said. That shows why Christian organizations were not invited and why his speech was not delivered at Abuja, but rather at the heart center of Islamism in Nigeria. In the war Ahmadu Bello declared on the people of Zik that is still raging to death, which the current Sultan and the progenies of Hausa Fulani are expected to continue, John Kerry gave a command on how this war must be fought. He said that the Boko Haram terrorist group, which they have already trained and laundered in Biafra land, should kill the people of Zik mercilessly. Not only kill them, destroy and burn down their homes, loot their homes, feed themselves in the battlefront with foodstuffs taken from their homes before burning their homes, carry their guests and women of their choice from Biafra land, kidnap students, go to their female institutions, rape and carry their guests of their various choices as wives and slaves, boast no agenda other than to murder teachers, means burn their books, kill their teachers, and kidnap their students. Many Boko Haram fighters have been laundered in villages in Biafra land, assessment and so on and so forth all over Biafra land, south, and southeast. When the final order for attack is given, they should all move immediately to their respective designated areas of attack, house to house. They are to burn, kill, rape, steal foodstuffs, and destroy everything in sight. Total destruction. Order for the killing of children. I'm quoting from him. But we all know that beating Boko Haram on the battlefield is only the beginning of what we need to do, meaning a direct operational order to kill Biafrans, especially their male, in the war is just only the beginning of what must be done. The orders that follow are self-expressive. I'm quoting him. As the American writer David Torres wrote, note, first, the next statement is in quote within the speech, meaning operational order. There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to only one who is striking at the root. So we have to strike at the root cause of violent extremism. Not again the use of the word violent extremism. We will come to that later. The stated order from John Kerry is that killing Biafran men at the battlefield is only the beginning of what we need to do. There are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to only one who is striking at the root. So we have to strike at the root cause of violent extremism, meaning when you kill their men at the battlefield, their children grow up, learn what happened to their fathers, and become more violent than their fathers. We must strike at the root cause of violent extremism. It means you must kill all the children you see in Biafra land. That is why they stopped teaching history in Nigerian schools. Now let us look at the global conspiracy that agrees on the slaughter of Biafrans. I'm quoting him, so make no mistake, we don't have to be prisoners of this violent extremism. Violent extremism is not a reference, I'm quoting at the end of his speech. Remember, violent extremism is not a reference to Boko Haram terrorists or their lives. He's referring to a particular set of people, and I've told you that those people are Biafran. Then his quote again, it can be eliminated. No one anywhere has to live among this evil, and it is evil, but isn't going to disappear on its own. This particular race, violent extremism, can be eliminated. No one anywhere have to live. Means that this particular race are evil, and there is a united global call for their elimination from the surface of the earth. From the surface of the earth. Because if you leave them as they are, they will not change, so they must be eliminated. We do not have to be prisoners of this violent extremism. We cannot continuously be held ransom by this race or group called violent extremism. Now look at it. American government declares jihad on the former eastern region. I'm quoting him. And that is something that His Eminence the Sultan understands better than anybody, as he preaches tolerance and bring faith group together in order to do the hard work of pushing back against extremism. It takes leadership, and it will require sustained effort from all of us, from regional, national, and sub-regional leaders, from the United Nations and other multinational institutions. This is just like throwing bomb on Hiroshima, declaration of jihad, so to say. Finally, the die is cast. What the American Secretary of State literally said in his speech, at Sokoto is that the Sultan of Sokoto, Alhaji Muhammad Saad Abubakar III, who has seen and experienced firsthand the dangers posed by the activities of this violent extremism, distress clamoring for change in the already established and consolidated status quo oligarchy dominance of the Fulani leadership hold on power in Nigeria, must bring everything at its disposal, including the total support, total commitment of all the member countries of the Islamic World League, to bear in a declaration of jihad against the race clamoring for change. That the fight is not going to be easy, so we must ensure the participation and unflinching support of those member countries of the United Nations and other terrorist organizations under the control of America to join the effort of the Sultanate of Sokoto in destroying these violent extremists that are clamoring for change in the established status quo order in Nigeria. This is the direct operational statement of the American president under Barack Obama, delivered to the American Secretary of State, John Kerry. No John Kerry's use of evil most times refers to the people or race referred as violent extremism. And before we even go further to identify this group or race, it is important to reproduce an earlier treated remark of John Kerry, to wit, and I'm repeating it. So make no mistake, we do not have to be the prisoners of this violent extremism. It can be eliminated. No one anywhere has to live or should have to live among this evil, and it is evil, but it isn't going to disappear on its own, and that is something that is eminent. The Sultan understands better than anybody as he preaches tolerance and bring interfaith groups together in order to do the hard work of pushing back against extremism. It takes work and it takes leadership, and it will require sustained efforts of all of us, from regional, national, and sub-national leaders from the United Nations and other multinational institutions. Very important to note the reproduced statement of John Kerry, which is a direct reference to an identified but unmentioned enemy that we must identify now, who he is immediately after John Kerry's imaginary banter in his legend story of Zik and Ahmadu Bello. To wit, Zik said, "Let us not forget our differences," and Bello countered, "No, let us understand our differences." What followed immediately is in the context where we will locate what enemy referred as evil or violent extremism that the whole world have united to destroy and eliminate from the surface of the earth, and clearly shows or locate the real differences in the imaginary conversation he was talking about between President Azikiwe and Ahmadu Bello. What follows came under the subheading peaceful coexistence, and I'm quoting that peaceful coexistence. Equality and tolerance, justice and mercy, compassion and humility, these are values that transcend religious, ethnicity, and all kinds of moral codes. They are certainly in teaching with the teachings of Islam that has enriched the world for centuries. And those who will tear our communities apart, pitting one religion or one sect against another, they can only be defeated by citizens' unyielding commitment to unity and mutual understanding. End of quote. Match this statement with the reproduced earlier treated statement on evil that no one anywhere have to live with, that the United Nations and every institution in the world has already united to eliminate from the surface of the earth, something referring to the same race or group of people. Now, who are those race or group in Nigeria today most vociferous and seriously want to separate from the Nigerian state today? Who are those? And those who will tear our communities apart? The answer is as clear as crystal. The group is the Biafrans as a group. If one still insists on separating these two twin brothers of the same parent apart, they are still linked and binded by the same bloodline, the same destiny, and they too, if we choose to call them Niger Delta people, are threatening to declare their independence. If the world does not understand them and knew that they are one people, why are they not treating the Niger Delta people different as they are treating the Igbos, whom they are pointing to the Niger Delta people that these people, that they are not their brothers? Are they not suffering the same fate in Nigeria? So when you hear them use the word violent extremism, it is referring to you, the Biafrans, and no other people. Somebody may say OPC, Awolowo does not feature here. And if you talk of OPC, there's nothing like OPC in this case. When Otumba Agani Adam, the leader of OPIS, was turbaned the Onyoka Kamfo, even Buhari himself sent people to represent him there. So Yoruba did not come inside it. Violent extremism means you. All the ECAS and ECOWAS meeting is all about you. Everything the United Nations is doing, violent extremism as a code hidden, is all about you. I will come again to discuss more important things.